Good morning, everyone. My name's Lana. I'm a librarian at the University of Adelaide, and thank you for joining me today on Ghanaland for this webinar. I'd like to acknowledge the Ghana people as the traditional owners of the land from which I'm presenting from today and pay my respects to elders past and present. Please feel free to pop in the chat if you'd like to acknowledge where you're tuning in from also. So welcome. This webinar is part 4 of a series of webinars that the library is hosting this semester, and we do invite you to come along to any others in the future. Today, we will be looking at how you can use GenAI or Generative Artificial Intelligence to help you with search strategies for your assignments or research that you're doing. It will be recorded, so you can come back and watch anytime. We'll be posting it on our University Library YouTube channel. We'll link the recording on our library webinar training page, and we'll send you a follow-up email with the recording, so you shouldn't miss out on being able to look at this again. We will also pop links into the chat today for those recordings, so you can go and have a look at any of our previous webinars or sign up for a future one. Please feel free to pop any questions in the chat throughout the session. We also have Rani online this morning. She's a colleague of mine and will help out with answering questions throughout, and she'll be the one posting links in the chat. So I do recommend that you bookmark those links that we throw in there for safekeeping, and we will have a little bit of time at the end for questions as well. I'm just going to pop up a poll first of all before we start. Hopefully you should see that. So it's just a couple of questions so I know who I'm talking to today. First question just asks what year of study you're in, and the second question is which faculty you're from. So I'll give you a second just to pop your answers in. And as I said, feel free to take notes throughout the webinar and ask questions as you go. But please know that you can watch this again at any time afterwards for the recording. So I do apologize if I'm flying through the content a little bit fast today. Okay, so first up, I do want to show you where you can go to find some of our key resources in the AI space. So I'm just going to switch to my internet browser. So on the library webpage, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a link here for How Do I guides. Within here, we've created a guide on artificial intelligence under Find Information. And there it is there. And this is by far one of the most popular guides that we have created ever for the library. So please, if you're not sure where to start or you just need some basic info, have a look at this guide. There's a lot of information in here. There's a lot of handy links to have a look through. And I will also point out in here on the left-hand side, we've got recordings to a masterclass that we held last semester, and we've broken it up into a series of shorter videos. So if you need sort of any basic understanding of AI, I invite you to have a look at these. Okay, so today I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey of some example prompts that I gave to both ChatGPT and Claude last week and earlier this week. I decided not to do live prompting for this session purely because we've only got 30 minutes. And when I was researching this, I went down quite a lot of rabbit holes in different ways. So I wanted to sort of keep it a bit more succinct and go through some of the things that I found most handy. And you never know, with live prompting, we could get totally different answers to what I asked last week. I will say I have started recently using Claude more than ChatGPT ever since Sonnet came onto the scene. They're both free though, and I suppose it comes down to personal preference, which one you prefer and which one maybe gives you better results. And you can always throw in your prompts into both and see if one gives you better answers or answers that you prefer more so than the other. Also, before we go in, just a little disclaimer, as AI is still new on the scene and in the scene of education, while I am showing you some different ways that you can use these models to help you with your searching or your research, it's always best to check that it's okay for you to do this in any sort of assessment, especially, if that assessment does involve showing your how you've developed your search strategy. So if you've asked for permission and that's all good on your end, that's great. We do recommend popping in an acknowledgement on your assessment as well. And in the guide that I showed you before, we show you how to do that, so you can check that one out. And due to the nature of how these models work, sometimes they can hallucinate or give you incorrect answers. So just always go in skeptical, go in thinking, okay, what can I critique here? What might be wrong, rather than just taking everything at face value. And although I don't think there'll be too many scenarios today where this might happen, but just try not to put any personal information into your prompts when using these models either. Okay, so let's dive into actually looking at some stuff. Okay, So when you're planning your search, there are some really basic sort of essential steps that you should be in the habit of doing. So first is identifying your keywords, your key concepts that you're interested in researching. Next is finding or brainstorming what alternative terms you could be using for those keywords when you're doing your searching. And then you sort of put that all together, combining your keywords into a search strategy, using and or, using wildcards, truncation, that sort of thing. So once you've come up with your main concepts that you're interested in searching, one of that very initial steps is to come up with some alternative terms for your search strategy. Now you could go to a thesaurus, you could go to Google, but let's see what Claude and ChatGPT could do for us, or another Gen AI model. So one of my first questions that I was interested in exploring was, does varying your prompts, putting in different types of prompts, affect the results that are given? So my initial task, I tried 3 slightly different worded prompts for both Claude and ChatGPT to do the same thing. So I started with prompt 1, no context, just give it the task and see what it gets. Prompt 2, I gave the model a persona, a bit of context, and the task that needed to be doing. And then the third prompt, I said, okay, I have a task. I need to do this for this. Can you help me with this? So those were the 3 different types of prompts that I wanted to see what different answers I could get. So first up, jumping into ChatGPT. So this is prompt type 1, no context at all. I just asked it, what are some synonyms for gut microbiome? And pretty basic answers. It's given me exactly what I've asked for. It hasn't expanded on it really. We've given it no context, so it's given us no context back. So let's compare with Claude. So Claude, exactly the same prompt. It's given me similar answers in terms of the actual synonyms, 1 extra, but the difference here with Claude is it's given a follow-up comment, and it's also suggested a further prompt. So you'll start to see some of the differences between Claude and ChatGPT, and the follow-up prompts is one of the things I like about Claude. Okay, so that was a very basic prompt. Let's try prompt type 2. So giving the model a persona, providing some context and a task. So this was the prompt that I popped in. I said, you are a first-year university student studying biology and you need to research some articles on gut microbiome. You want to find as many relevant answers as possible. So what are some other possible search terms that could be used for gut microbiome? So let's see what it spat out. And I apologize if this is a little bit small, but you don't really need to know what the answers are. It's just to see the sort of depth. So you can see straight up it's given a lot more in terms of different synonyms or alternative search terms. And it's given some options to combine different search terms. So you've got your gut microbiome concept, and then it's combined it with a different concept there. So it's sort of starting to go, oh, maybe you could combine this with this. So whether that's what you're after, or if you're purely just wanting alternative terms for gut microbiome or whatever concept that you've put in there. So you can already see that context, giving it just a little bit of context makes a bit of a difference. Okay, let's have a look at what Claude did. So exactly the same prompt once again. Okay, so it has given more answers than it did in the first type of prompt. It's given us 15 different alternative terms. It hasn't given any combination of keywords or different concepts. So this might be more on track of what we were actually asking for in the beginning. And again, it does provide that follow-up comment and prompt at the end as well. Okay, so then the third prompt was saying, I have a task that I need to do. I want to do this. Can you help me? So the prompt that I popped in was, I am a first-year university student studying biology and I need to research some articles. I want to find as many relevant answers as possible. What are some possible search terms that could be used? So let's see what we got. So it's given 20, same number of suggestions as it did with prompt 2, slightly different answers, and the summary text is very similar. So with ChatGPT, giving it the difference between giving the model persona and saying I have a task, there's not a huge difference in there. Let's have a look at Claude. Okay, so exactly the same prompt. Okay, also the same number, so it's given 15 results, same as prompt 2, slightly different if you were to compare between, but then it does provide some extra info at the end that it thinks could be handy to for me to use that it didn't in the previous prompt. So now it's sort of helping me in that extra rather than when we gave it that persona and it was for itself to do. And again, it follows up with a bit of a suggested prompt there. So yeah, so that was the 3 different prompts that I played around with. It's good to play around with these models to see what they give. If you're not getting quite the answer that you need, you can always tweak your prompt a little bit and try that difference between, giving it a persona, giving it a task, or saying, I have a task to do, I need some help. And providing as much context as possible will sort of help it to be able to give context back to you. Okay, so task 1. Done. Task 2 that I was keen to look at. So this is all to do with building your search strategy now that you've got your keywords or your key concepts that you're interested in. So let's say I want to do a basic search to see what resources are available on a topic. So the keywords or key concepts here that I've got are social media, mental health, and teenagers. And I want to know what GenAI can do to help me with this in terms of starting up with building a search strategy. So I put in as my prompt to start off with, I need to do a basic search to see what resources are available on a topic. The key concepts are social media, mental health, and teenagers. Can you provide a basic search strategy using these concepts? So I went with the 3rd type of prompt saying, I have a task. This is what I need to do. Can you help? And there was a few things that I was curious about before going into this. I was curious whether it was going to pick up on basic search strategies like phrase searching. So where we've got social media and mental health, knowing that that's 2 words. Generally, when you do a search, you need to put quotation marks around those. So I was curious if it was going to do that. I was curious if it was going to understand how to use connector words like and or correctly. So I suppose the thing to note from this is before diving into using GenAI, because it can hallucinate and make things up, sometimes you do need to have that basic understanding yourself of search strategies so that you can be critical of the responses and sort of pick and choose what is going to work best for you. Okay, so let's have a look at ChatGPT. So I popped in that prompt and I couldn't fit this all on one page, so we spread it out over a few slides. But it gave me 4 different sections, which I thought was quite cool. So it started off with some keywords and phrases, so some other alternative terms that I might want to use. And then it gave me a little bit of a summary on a search strategy. So it said, combine your concepts with and it's given us some examples of how you would do that. Using or, so yeah, it's done that correctly, suggesting teenagers or adolescents, mental health or depression or anxiety. It has picked up that you should use quotation marks for phrases or anything over more than 1 word. So it's wrapped social media and mental health in quotation marks there. It has said limit by publication date, which is great, but if you were to look in this example here, this is not a thing, and I will show you an example of that. So this is sort of one of the things where you need to be critical. You need to go out and test these things to see if they actually work. And it's also given us some databases to start trying out. So yeah, that's really good. For this topic, I would have suggested PubMed or PsycInfo. I generally don't suggest Google Scholar as the first database to go into. I would suggest going to university library catalogue first, and then you will find stuff that's found in Google Scholar as well. Anyway, so all up, pretty good for a search strategy, for a suggestion. The only thing I would maybe be critical of is that it has used the plurals of teenagers instead of teenager, because it will automatically, databases will automatically pick up teenagers if you put in teenager, but it won't always go back the other way. And you could use truncation there if you wanted, and it hasn't used truncation at all in these suggestions. And then part 3 of its 4-part response, it gave us some example searches. So again, so for Google Scholar here, it's given us this this publication date, 2013 to 2023. And, I hadn't come across this one before, so I thought I'd throw it into Scholar and see what would come up, and it didn't work. Nothing came up. So that was just something it's just kind of pulled out and gone, oh yeah, that sounds like it could be plausible, but unfortunately, it doesn't work quite like that. So you're better off just to filter by date rather than putting it in your search string. In terms of the other ones, I mean, generally, yes, they're built quite well. In PubMed, though, because it's quite a complex database, we do sort of suggest when and where to use quotation marks because there are some underlying field codes that work in PubMed, and putting quotation marks in sort of breaks that coding a little bit. So yeah, but if you know what PubMed's all about and know how it works, you would pick up on that. But otherwise, the search string in general looks pretty good. And then lastly, it gave some additional tips, which is nice of it. Suggested looking at review articles, making sure you cite your sources, and then using filters as well to help you build your search strategy. So I thought, that was not too bad for an answer. If you're starting out, you're wanting a basic search strategy, I think that was pretty good. So let's see what Claude came up with. Okay, exactly the same prompt. And this was it. This is all it gave me. So first thing I noticed was it was much shorter, a bit more basic compared to ChatGPT, which was quite extensive. The thing I noticed first was that Claude did suggest popping in truncation at the end there. So that's just accounting for the S. I maybe would have truncated after teen. It just gives you some more options, gives you teen, teens, teenager, teenagers. So that's where it sort of didn't quite get there for that one, maybe. This one, I thought it organized the related terms a bit better, whereas ChatGPT just listed them. This one's actually sorted it into its main concepts, which I think is a little bit handier to have. It's only given one example of how to combine terms, but compared to ChatGPT, it was pretty much the same, just in different databases. So that's okay, I think, as starting out for a basic one. It does say here, part 4, consider adding specific aspects. I would say I would err on maybe not really using these in your search strategy. When we talk about identifying your key concepts, we usually say to ignore words like benefits or effects or positive. When you're doing your research, that's when you're doing your sort of your literature review part. You're working out what the effects are. You're summarizing what the benefits are. And then limit by date if needed. So again, it's pulled out this after colon 2020 to focus on research. So I hadn't heard of that one either. So I threw that one into Google Scholar. So I did our basic search after 2020, and first result came up 2018. There was a 2020 there, 2019. So it doesn't work. It's probably just looking at it as a keyword rather than actually telling it. So again, another little thing where it didn't quite get it right, but it's tried. So good to be critical of what you're looking at. It has said to use quotation marks, so that's good. And then trying different combinations of the terms in preferred search engine. So it's quite different between the two. So it might be beneficial, to do it in both and see what answers you get. And you can sort of pick and choose from each. Okay, task 3, exploring a topic. So one of the things I do like about Claude is that it gives you suggested prompts to follow on with. So you can sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole. It might give you suggestions for things you didn't think of, and you kind of go, oh yeah, that could be useful for me. So that's what I wanted to do. So I went back to our initial prompt where we said, I'm doing some research on gut microbiome. Can you give me some alternative search terms? And the follow-up prompt here for this one was, would you like me to suggest some specific areas within gut microbiome research that might be interesting to explore? So this might be handy if you've got sort of your broad concept area that you're interested in, but you're not really sure where to go to be specific in your research. So I can't help but being polite in these models. So I said, yes, please. And it came out with 15 different research areas that you could look into. I would say to do some initial searching on these topics, see if they are actually plausible, if there is enough research out there for you to, do further research into. And if you want, I would suggest, potentially asking between the different models to see what answers you get. So I think I did throw this one into ChatGPT as well, just to see what the difference was. Okay. This one gave me 15 different topics as well. slightly different topics, and it did give a bit more of an explanation of each type of topic. So maybe this could be handy. But again, I personally don't really know anything about gut microbiome, so I would need to go and do some research to see if these are plausible areas to look into. Okay, so let's go back to Claude. So I've said, yes, please. And it's given, the 15 different ones. And I said, okay, I'm intrigued by option number 5. So option number 5 was about the early life microbiome development. And I asked it, could you identify the key concepts from this topic so that I can do some preliminary searching? And this was the initial prompt I gave to it. And I suppose I had an idea of what I was expecting to come out of this prompt. So let's see what came out. So this is what it gave me. And it's kind of just given me different concepts. But at first glance, it just didn't seem too useful for me. I didn't know. I wasn't enjoying the results of this prompt, so I decided to tweak it slightly. So I changed it to this. This is sort of what I was thinking. So could you create an initial search strategy that I might try? Okay. So this was more to what I was hoping for. I wanted to do some initial searching and actually have a search strategy. So, different alternative terms, combining it into a search string there. So again, just another example of how you can tweak your prompts a little bit to get the answer that, you're sort of thinking that you want to get out of it. Yeah. Okay. So really the take home message is, have a play in these models. It's always good to have a basic understanding of the knowledge yourself, because if you don't have that basic understanding, you can't pick up these little funky little errors or things that if you're not aware of those basic strategies, you won't realize that is an error until, you should go try it out anyway, see if these search strategies work for you, but then knowing how you can tweak them yourself. So it's good to just get a little bit of an idea, brainstorm of how you can get started in a topic. So we had a little look at finding some alternative terms using different types of prompts, a no context prompt, giving it a persona or saying, I have a task, can you help me? And then we looked at how to build a basic search strategy, and then exploring a topic a little bit more. You can sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole in some of these models and get some really cool information coming out. So we are at the end of today. So we do have webinars every week. So next week is referencing essentials at the same time. So we invite you to come along to any of these. We do have another webinar on Gen AI and evaluating Gen AI. I think it might be the 5th one after this. So it's in a few more weeks. So please feel free to sign up for that one. Invite you to take your own time to explore using these models in different ways. And as I said, with you, when it comes to assessments, just make sure that it is okay for you to use these, dependent on what you're sort of needing to do for that assessment. Feel free to contact the library at any time if you do have any questions. Otherwise, thank you for joining me today, and hope to see you next week or at one of our future webinars. Thanks.